Hey, 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 it's Kimberly Smith Austin here, and I want to welcome you back to another episode of the Made to Inspire podcast. I am here today with my awesome and amazing co host, Misty Kerrigan. Hey, Misty.
Hey, Kimberly. Good morning, good evening, good night, whatever time you're listening at. We are on fire here at the Made to Inspire podcast because, back by popular demand, we are in now a business series. Do you want to tell them a little bit about this series, Kimberly?
Well, you know what? We're talking this time about business for business. And what we thought we'd bring to you is amazing leaders, amazing consultants, people around the world that are going to help you on your journey to being the most amazing business. And they support businesses in their structure, in their format, in everything that we do. And today we have a treat for you. Yes, we said treat. And he comes by the name of Troy A. Small. Listen, if you haven't heard of Troy, you're going to love today's show. Grab your pen and paper, get ready, and let's go. So with that,
I want to add before you give to Troy, is you nailed it, is the next series is we're bringing on businesses that exist to help other businesses grow and scale. So if you have a business or a business idea, growing and scaling is something you're going to want to do. And there's not a lot of companies out there that are as heart-centered and focused on their customers as Troy's company. So we're super excited to have him here today and to go over little tips and strategies, but to really just get to a little know about why. What a great idea, because Troy could have been doing so many other things once you hear him introduce himself, but he chose to jump into a world that helps expand other businesses, and we love that. So without further ado, Mr. Troy A. Small.
Awesome. Thank you, Misty. Thank you, Kimberly. Good morning to you. Good morning, good afternoon, good day to wherever everyone else is. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am so happy to be here today. I'll go ahead and give a little bit of background about me and where I've come from. I like to start. I am a native of St. Louis, Missouri, is where I'm originally from. I joined the Marine Corps back in 1989. And I served 20 years of service as a United States Marine.
Wow.
During my time as a Marine, I worked as a machine gunner. I served as a drill instructor for 3 years, training Marine Corps recruits and turning them into Marines. And I worked for 15 years as a contingency contracting officer. And as a contracting officer, this is where I gained my experience for federal government contracting. What I do today is I've taken that experience as a contracting officer and a business advisor, and I've turned it into a small business consulting firm. My company is Copperwater Consulting. I'm the founder and owner. And what I do with Copperwater is I'm a government contracting and business consultant. Basically, what I do is I help small business owners, particularly veteran-owned small businesses and woman-owned small businesses, to start up, plan, execute, and basically move the needle and accomplish the goals that they're trying to accomplish so that their business can be successful. I'll kind of stop right there. I can keep going. I may have missed some things, Kimberly. I'm not sure, but I'll stop there. I'm so happy to be here today.
I love it. That is an amazing background. I love that you've taken your experience, 20 years, we might add, in the military, taken those tools that you learned and turned it into a business. You know, Troy and I had an opportunity to interview just about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and listening to that passion that resided inside of him and how he took it and transferred it into the marketplace. Super excited to hear those things, but we're going to get into a little detail. But Misty, I know you had a question. What was that thing you're thinking about as Troy introduced himself? Was there something that stood out to you?
It did. I was lucky enough. I probably may have been a year ago. Time flies. I got to see, Troy, I got to see you give a presentation. And when I sat through the presentation, I first connected on it because one of my companies, I'm in charge of government contracts, county contracts, and then federal contracts. And so a lot of things you're saying, I'm like, oh yeah, I relate to that. Then I went on to 2 other business trainings. And in both trainings, everyone was recommending grants. They couldn't say it enough. They say grants are one of the things you should be doing monthly, if not quarterly, for any business, because there's so much out there. And then it hit me. I'm like, oh crap, that's what Troy does. And one of the things Troy does is he really sits down with businesses and really helps them through that process, because grants are something that helps your business and infuses it, because every business needs financing. That's usually why we're in business, right? But not only do you get the grant process, because some people know how to write grants and other people know how to do strategic business. You combine helping people with grants while strategizing with them for their individual business. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. And to add on to that, I help them strategize in their grant response, which is actually needed to the extent where that's what determines if they win the funds or not, right? That's what determines if they get funded, is if if their story is compelling enough, right? So they're doing a social good, but are they telling the story in such a way that the funders say, okay, I feel comfortable giving my money to this project, right? Because they're giving their money to a social cause. So that's absolutely correct. And what I also like to let everyone know is that grants and contracts are very similar. The difference between a grant and a contract basically is where the money comes from and the purpose of the money, right? So there's these things called different colors of money. So grant funding basically is put in place for causes of good or to help bigger community challenges and problems, whereas contracts are more so to fix a particular good or service, a particular need. However, the last thing I'll say this on the grants though is when you win a grant, you end up with a contract.
The game has changed. The game has changed. It's not like it used to be. It really is. Your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. So just coming out there and doing it by yourself, a lot of people get frustrated.
Absolutely. There's so much information. There's a lot of conflicting information. There could be conflicting information within the actual grant or the contract, meaning that if you don't understand what they're saying, you can confuse yourself. So there's a lot of red tape. And what I've done and what I've decided to do, right, is how I got here today is way back when I was a younger Marine, early on in my career in contracting, I had to make a decision on if I wanted to kind of stay in the Marine path and go, the infantry route and all of that, or if I wanted to kind of think for my future. And I thought that, I can do this contracting thing when I get out of the military, and I can take my knowledge and I can help small businesses who are trying to do business with the government because it's difficult. And I saw that at that time. And so that's what I do now is basically give them the perspective of the government, all right, the contracting officer's perspective on how their company can best win that work, right? What can you do to get the government to say yes and award you a contract?
So is it fair to say that if we have a business, we could still do civilian, we could do business, but we could still go after a contract and meet that contract while still having a business? Or do you have to choose?
Oh, no, absolutely. No, you don't. You can do both. So what I show people that they can do is that as a commercial business, you may have consumer clients, you may have other business to business clients, other commercial clients. What I'm here to show you is that there's a whole other marketplace that's called the government contracting marketplace. And there's several of them. There's the federal level, there's the state level, there's 50 states. Right. So there's a lot of work out there, a lot of procurement that's being done all around us, unbeknownst to us. And what I'm trying to do is shed light on this buying and the money that's being passed around or, contracted, and trying to get my fellow small business owners a piece of that pie.
Wow, that's amazing. All I can think about is you help people get the bag. I think about that expression and how powerful that is. Now, Troy, you and I have talked on a number of occasions, and I've understand a couple things. Although the contracts and grants are out there, your business also helps people get these certifications, because I know some of the money is limited by your quote unquote status. Tell us a little bit about the certifications that you help people do, or the certifications that are out there and available to give them access to some of the money.
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that. So there's several certifications and at differing levels, and I'll try to respond in such a way that it's easy to understand. So at the federal government level, you have certifications such as Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business, Woman-Owned Small Business Federal Contracting Program, the 8A program, Hub Zone program, right, at the federal level. At the state level, you also have another Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise certification, Small Business certification, and also minority certifications. Those can vary between the states, but at the basic level, women, minorities, veterans, generally speaking, there's a certification for those different groups. Now, why certifications are important and why they matter is because certifications are a way for our government to kind of level the playing field for small businesses who have been socially and economically disadvantaged against. For instance, all of those minority groups, right? You can point to times in history where these groups have not had as much opportunity as other groups. So what certifications do, I like to refer to it as a form of equity in business. They're giving small disadvantaged businesses the opportunity to only compete amongst themselves. So it's like you have 5 woman-owned businesses competing instead of 25 businesses in general. So, right, instead of competing against, 100 companies, there's only 5 of you competing, right? So you have a much larger chance of winning. And so that's why for small businesses who do not have their certifications, I recommend that they do, because as business owners, it's part of our job to be on the receiving end of these contracts, right?
Yes.
The lawyers, the politicians, the governments put these rules in place and laws in place to say, set aside 25%, 26% of the contracts for small business, but yet the small businesses don't participate. So I'm trying to get small businesses to look and say, hey, there's programs out there for you.
Wow.
For you, right? For you, service disabled veteran, for you, woman-owned small business, for you, 8A business. There's programs that are there to help you to be in a better position to win, right? You have a higher likelihood of winning. That's all you can ask for in business is a chance, right? And so when you have an increased chance, then we should be definitely trying to take advantage of that.
So I want to add to that. So if I then reapply and then we get money, but that doesn't mean my business, it gives me a chance. But if I don't strategically place that money and do the things that are going to help the business, that's where you come in. It's not only to being able to help me find the money, apply for the money, get certified for the money, but once I get the money, help me as a business owner strategically utilize the money to create more business and impact more customers.
Absolutely. And it's a couple of different ways, because if the grants and the contracts are kind of separate. So if you're going for a grant, you actually have to tell them what you're already going to use the money on. And so when you submit that grant proposal, the money's already spent based on what you have in writing. And so when that money's come, then that grant goes for that project you submitted on. So it's kind of by itself, if you will. Now, but to your point, if you're just a normal mom and pop shop, or bigger than that, not that a mom and pop is small or anything, but if you're a small business like me, let me say it like that, right? Or Kimberly or Misty, and you're doing business and your business is clicking away, you're pretty successful. Obviously, we can always be more, but you keep hearing about this contracting thing. Yes, I come in and I help you to strategize on, okay, well, this is what you sell. Let's find out who in the government might buy that. And if they do buy it, why and when. I just got off a call this morning, 8 o'clock this morning, a gentleman that sells PPE equipment. And we just kind of had that same conversation. And I was telling him, because he was thinking federal contracts. And I was like, well, you may have more luck at the hospitals, at the police departments, at first responders, because they use more PPE on a regular basis than anyone. I go to the VA, every time I go in there, they give me a mask. Every week I go for a rehab, right? They have gloves. That's a repetitive, consumable use of PPE. So in that case, I was like, you may start smaller locally as opposed to federal. So strategy can vary. And to your point, Misty, that's where I come in, because I can help small business owners not waste time. I can help you leapfrog to where you're trying to go simply by insight and knowledge of the process.
And I want to get to our readers is, I don't know about in Kimberly, I don't know if you thought this too. I always thought, when I thought grants and contracts, I thought nonprofits and big companies when I think grants and contracts. But what you're able to do is kind of like you said, the mom and pop or any company, if they really sit down and kind of look at, they could qualify, because it's not just nonprofits and big organizations that are able to utilize these grants and contracts.
Absolutely.
Like, there's a misconception out there, if you will.
There's definitely a misconception. And I would say there's more opportunity at your state and county level.
Mm.
One of the things I like to say, and this is a recent revelation I personally had, is just kind of the way it came to me, is that the federal government is more worried about the states than it is about the constituents of the states, if you will. That's why when a state doesn't do something the government wants, they talk about holding funding and take their money away. They play that little game, right? But the states are truly worried about the people, because the people is that we are the state. That's what makes up the state, is the individuals that live there. So there's more contracts and grants that are specific to the people of the county, which means that there is more work for the small businesses of the county, because that's contracting, right? In order for them to get their needs served, they have to have a local business do it.
Wow.
So this is where, to your point, qualification matters. So you can be a small business or a nonprofit and potentially win a grant. Generally, it's for nonprofits, but there are grants out there like work programs. Well, a for-profit company can create a work development program for the community and get a grant to fund that. I see them all the time. And as a matter of fact, if you're a workforce development company out there, call me. So when I see the next one, we can talk about it.
I love that. Troy, the thing I think about, I have always heard about, and I'll tell you, in years past, worked on contracts. But one of the things I've heard from business owners over the years is, man, this takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. And there's the conception, also the idea that it takes a lot of money. Can you walk us through the normal timeline? I recognize it will be different for each organization, but is it a lengthy process?
It is. It's a lengthy process, no matter what, particularly for the normal person out there who's not involved in contracting, because you're like, do what, do this, do that. It's like it just seems like overkill, just because, when there's a reason kind of sort of behind the madness. So I'm gonna come back to the time. I'm gonna hit the cost piece. So costs, I look at it like this: you're paying with your time, right? And if you're a micro business, a small business, that we leverage our time for success.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm on this call right now, leveraging my time so that I can potentially get a new prospect, right? Support your program so that you can get right. So we're leveraging our time for success. So because no one's like, you're not paying me to do this, right? We volunteer, it's all volunteer, right? And so so with in that regard, I'm sorry, I got distracted here. We gotta
the length of time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The time piece. So you're paying with your time. Yes, if you have employees that are working on that, of course, you're paying with salaries for that piece. But mostly it's going to be your time and your energy, which is why you always want to start early. If you start early, it doesn't seem like it's costing you anything, because it's not. But the more pressure packed it is, the more you feel it, then it's costing you your health and stress and all of that. That's the cost. How long it takes really depends on the complexity of the requirement. But generally speaking, it's always going to take probably about a month or so, because you have.
Wow. That's not long at all. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, yeah. So, I mean, like you have a requirement that comes out, you bid, they give you about, 4 weeks to a month to bid, to submit your proposal. And then they're going to take a month to 6 months to review it. It just depends on how complex it is. After they review it, they give the response. That's the process. A lot of the timing is in the writing and the pre-work. This is where people don't like, where do I start? Like, it's like, okay, I see that I can do that, but where do I start?
Absolutely.
This is where I come in, right? There's a process. Like you set up an abstract, right? You document and make note of all of the basic requirements you have to respond to, and that drill. And so it gets quite lengthy, but this is why I'm here. And so I always say, why work, why play? Like don't work where I play. Like those parts of the requirement and the process are quote unquote simple to me because it's ingrained in me. I've been doing it for 33 years basically.
I love the why work, why play. But the other thing, psychologically, for small business owners and entrepreneurs especially, they're only usually accountable to themselves, and they're only handling what's in front of them. So yes, I could write a grant, but I know I'm going to push it off because, tomorrow I have to speak, and the next day this, and something's always coming up. But if I work with someone, I want to be accountable to that work that we're doing. So not only can you guide, but psychologically, you provide this next level that they were going to want to get the stuff done faster than they would if they're trying to navigate everything by themselves, especially as you get frustrated and overwhelmed. We always say an overwhelmed person does nothing. So instead of trying to navigate it by yourself, bringing in someone like Troy not only helps you navigate it faster and more effectively, but you add in that layer of, if you're working with someone else, you're going to hit deadlines and you're going to create deadlines. So I think that's a win-win for the business owner and the entrepreneur.
Absolutely. There's definitely an accountability step there, and compliance, accountability and compliance. And it has to come. And from my position, I'm going to create a schedule. There's going to be initial action items right off the bat, because timing is always of an essence. And so, or of the essence in responding to these requirements. And so being organized is very key. So it's not haphazard at all. And one of the goals of having someone like me is making sure that you don't miss a beat, right? You're checking all of the boxes that need to be checked while you're pursuing that opportunity, because it can be frustrating and take some time to get these proposals submitted. You want to make sure you do it right, because you can be thrown out for one non-compliant issue. Like if you don't do something that they say, like, or in the way they say it, they can throw your proposal out. And you don't want to do 2-3 weeks of writing and work, and then just one simple thing get you thrown out. Or God forbid you're late, like you're an hour late submitting, you're 1 hour past the due date. They don't have to take it. And
they stamp it. When we give our government contracts, sometimes we tell the person, because it's in Riverside, and we tell them we'll pay for the speeding ticket, but this has to be.
Yeah, that's good. The one thing I think about, Troy, you mentioned small business consulting as well as government contracting. When I know the government contracting part being very intensive to some degree, I'm sure that you encounter people who come to you and say, hey, I want the government contract, but they may not be in position for it yet. And so I want to ask, what are some of the challenges you've encountered with organizations that know they want to reach out and get that local state government money, but they aren't ready? What does that look like?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that, Kimberly. It happens. It happens often a little bit. I mean, to the extent where, and what it looks like is that they see the opportunity and they've been made aware in some way, right? And maybe they do have a chance, right, based on the product or the service that they sell. But once I go through discovery with them, and we can kind of talk through their business and what they have going on, I begin to see that they're not as organized as they need to be in order to be successful chasing contracts or chasing a grant, right? Because the government is going to look to see and make sure that you are what they would consider a responsible contractor. And so there's things that go into being responsible. Basically, what it means is that you got your stuff together, right? You got your stuff together. You got your registrations. You register with your city. You register with your state. You have your business status, whether it's LLC, S Corp, C Corp, whatever you are, and all of those things. And so what I tend to need to do is, kind of back them up a little bit and say, okay, hold on, like, yes, the federal marketplace is there, but that's our end state. That's our macro goal. before we get there, we have a lot of little steps we need to take to make you a more viable small business, to make you look better and make you perform better. Because quite frankly, I work with a lot of companies at a lot of different levels, very successful, dynamic, sharp, large companies to very successful, dynamic, small companies, right? But they all have different ways of doing business, different processes. And I pick up on those, right? As we all do as professionals. And I take the good stuff and I, leave the rest. But what I end up doing is sharing those tips with my clients, particularly if their business operation is similar to another company who I've been working with. I'm like, well, I've been working with one company, they kind of do it like this. And I think you might be able to benefit by slightly switching your process to doing it slightly like they do it. And for these reasons, right? And that tends to work out. Sometimes, folks don't want to do that part. They want to get right to the contracts. But of course, you got to be a solid company first. You need to be optimized as far as your processes and your procedures. And that's what I help them to do when they're not ready for the contract per se.
So powerful.
So one of the things that I think too is sometimes people I probably won't qualify, but you would be able to take the time with them, and maybe they don't, but you could go from point A to point B and show them how they could prepare to qualify. Instead of that's how they take themselves out of the game, you could show them how to put themselves in the game.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that, Misty. So the first point is that, yes, I have an assessment that they can take, which it gives me information back that immediately I can kind of see where they are based on the responses and the depth of the responses, right? That it matters, right? And so, but also though, when we say government contracting, and so if you're not listening, listen right now. Check this out. Okay, pay attention right here. Turn up the volume. Okay, when we say government contracting, I don't just mean company A, B, C contracting with the government. Government contracting is also kind of what I'm doing, where my company, Copperwater Consulting, consults with other small businesses who have a government contract.
So a partnership, joint venture in some essence?
And yes, and or business support, business service, helping them to do their role better. Or in my case, feeding them wisdom, knowledge, and insight so they can take that to the government and say, well, this is what I feel. This is what my board is telling me, coming from me, right? And the government if they're not sharp enough and they don't know their stuff, they're going to be challenged, which from our vantage point is a good thing, because that just means that if I can have my client challenge the government, that means we're doing a good thing, because we wouldn't challenge them in a negative way, right? We would only challenge them to capitalize on the opportunity for our client. And so if we can do that, that's good. That means because the government doesn't necessarily know their stuff, whereas I have a little bit of knowledge and I use that to my advantage and to my client's advantage.
I think that's huge. I hope you guys heard that, because what it is why wouldn't the government want their contract to be successful? And if you're able to bring in people to help you be even more successful, it's a win-win-win.
Yes,
absolutely. And the government loves partnerships, especially in the grant world, but in contracts too. Here's the thing. The government wants small business to be successful for a variety of reasons. What those reasons are is, you can look them up, but just know that the government wants us to be successful. One of the things, we're the backbone of the country, the industrial, backbone, if you will. We are a source for creativity and innovation. Look at what happened in the pandemic. We had a heavy reliance on micro businesses, right, within the communities. But when you partner, number one, it strengthens the government's what they're getting, because it's two people, it's two companies involved now, not just one. There's then you also have the creativity, and particularly if these companies are really mutually benefit each other in the service or the product that they're providing back to the government. So it just goes back to, don't think that, well, I do this, so I can't get a contract with the government. Okay, that might be true. but it doesn't mean you can't help or support another company that can get a contract with the government. So don't like immediately cut off the idea if you feel like contracts is not for me. I mean, because you may just be a creative business person and be very good at program and project management. If you're good at project management, then you can manage a contract for another company.
I love that.
That's
Troy, you just reminded me of 2 contracts that I worked on in years past where I was in that position. I worked with another organization who got the contract for the city of Chicago, and I came in, I'll use the word as a sub on their team, but it was me working with them to help them fulfill the requirement. And then just a year and a half ago, the city of Rialto here working alongside with IBM to get that project done. So that's really good. And I'm glad what you said really triggered those thoughts in my head. That's powerful. And I think it's a great position to be in. So people listen and take note of the opportunities that are sitting here that are waiting for you. We just have to go look for them and find people like Troy, who is going to equip, empower, and give us what we need to get out there in the marketplace.
Look, we know we're in a recession. We know we're going to hit. We're nowhere through it. And so for businesses, I was just at somewhere last night and they were doing a talk on how to make sure that your customer experiences are on point, because some of that money that some of the businesses you have extra money, you're going to go do something for yourself, that money might not be there because of the times that we're going to kind of continue to enter. So what we did last podcast was we talked to business owners about suggestions on how to bring in more cash flows. What might that look like? And so it would not hurt to just sit down and have a conversation with Mr. Troy. Conversations never hurt anyone, because the worst that could happen is he could give you some pointers on how to elevate your business to be ready and prepared to be able to enter this world, or you're more ready and prepared than you thought, and there might be some things out there that you could start a process in today.
Yeah, I mean, you help hit on kind of like why I do this, Misty, in the sense that, I'm not just do the government contracting and business consulting, but I consider myself as just a resource. Like I am a door and a bridge to opportunity. That is how I see myself, and that's been confirmed in my life and in my business dealings consistently, and so I stick with it. And so a lot of it is about creativity. A lot of magic happens in the conversation. I am on calls weekly with other companies, whether it be sales calls or consulting calls, what have you, discovery calls. But to the point is a lot of magic happens. And I give away so many jewels daily. I laugh. I'm like, and sometimes I tell them, I'm like, hey, here's a good one for you. And this is on the house, because I'm calling it out, because it's good information. They need to know that, people would be paying for this. But the point being is that when we get together and we start talking and the imaginations start to go, this is where the true magic happens, because I say something from my business experience and background, and you latch onto that with your ideas, and you're like, aha, that's the thing I was missing. I'm like, yeah. And then we kind of talk about it. And then I'm like, oh, yeah. And I say something else. And then you have an even bigger aha. Yeah. And wow, right there, there's 2 big major ahas. Even if we stop right there, that's a great call. Right. But imagine what else may come out of that. Right. I mean, how many different positive action steps does the business owner have from there? So
I love that. A bridge to opportunity.
You have absolutely blown us away in today's show, Troy. I cannot, I'm sitting here, I've got pages of notes, and I'm usually not the one taking notes.
Right, Emma, you don't even take notes.
So I'm blown away. You are super fantastic, amazing. We're so grateful to have you. But before, as we prepare to start wrapping up, I've got a question for you. You've shared so much on today's show. If you could give our audience maybe one big tip, one thing that would empower them and get them fired up and ready to move, Troy, what would that one thing be?
Okay, so I'm going to use I'm going to use a quote. So the first one is, the road to Easy Street goes through the sewer. That's a John Madden quote. And basically what I'm saying is that don't be afraid to do things properly. As a matter of fact, from my vantage point, being proper and compliant is the biggest flex you can do, because there's so many people out there trying to cheat the game. This is how you win, by being compliant and doing what you're supposed to do, because so many people don't. So that's number one. The second one is execution is key. You have to plan, you have to execute. As a matter of fact, the three things I try to do with my companies, if you will, it's in helping them to plan, helping them to execute that plan, and then coming back and reconciling and figuring out what worked, what did not work, what should we keep doing, what else should we do in addition, right? And what should we stop doing? And then boom, repeat, wash and repeat, right? So those would be two tips I would give to the audience.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, Misty, go ahead.
I was typing plan, execute that plan, review the outcomes, enhance it, repeat it.
That's
Absolutely.
it.
Beautiful. We love steps.
Yes. So Troy, will you tell our audience where they can find you?
And
Sure.
don't forget to add your guru hours.
Yes. Well, if with that said, I am the government contracting guru at Hera Hub Temecula, and my guru hours are every Wednesday from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can also reach me on my company website, which is copperwaterconsulting.com. I have a YouTube channel. It's YouTube.com/Troy A. Small. And my YouTube channel, please go there, subscribe, watch the videos, like them. There's some good tips in there. My goal is to start increasing the amount of videos I post. But of course, business first. Like when business is successful, some of that other stuff kind of has to wait. And that's just how it is. And that's how I approach business. Like, because you can't do everything. So you got to do the most important things. And if it's making money, that's what's most important. So that's just my vantage point.
Well, you might, if you're listening on the podcast and not the YouTube, you might want to check out Troy's YouTube, because you didn't hear from me, but the Hera Hub women love Troy because he's brilliant. And the joke in Hera Hub is he's handsome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the joke. That's the joke.
So check out his YouTubes. Just for the nuggets alone, like Troy said, is even when sometimes it's better to hear something from a different vantage point. So you might be nervous having a conversation with him, but if you don't want to start somewhere, start at the YouTubes and then check out the website and then ease into it. But please start somewhere, because during this time, it's so important you don't leave money on the table, because if you don't take it, someone else will.
That's right.
Someone else will. That's for sure. And that's part of the problem, is that everyone doesn't bid. So if only a handful are bidding each time, only those handful are winning. And it's only because of lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
But now there's no longer a lack of knowledge, right? There's no longer an excuse. Everyone knows now. So you can reach out. My email is troy@copperwaterconsulting.com. And my phone number is 951-491-1200.
Awesome. Love it.
I gotta get that one more time. 951-491-1200.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Troy, we thank you so very much for joining us here on the Made to Inspire show. We're confident this is probably going to be one of the best shows, best well received, listened to out here, because you dropped the nuggets, you dropped the bombs, you brought it all, and we're so grateful for you. But as we say every single week out here to all of you listening, there is something out there waiting for you. And Troy,
now go get it.
Go get it.
Go get it.